Hello, welcome to the special called meeting of the Athens in Motion Commission. I'm going to share my video, share my screen. I want to share, yeah. All right, here's the agenda. I'm gonna make it bigger. The sole purpose of this meeting is to discuss Barber Street, the Barber Street projects. I guess I will entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
I don't think there's enough voting members.
Oh, that's true. We will approve the agenda when Mark gets here. For now, we will continue on. We didn't get any public comments, did we, Daniel?
I did not receive any.
All right. So here's the way I was thinking we would go about this today. I thought we would first review the request from the commission, because as y'all know, this has been kicked back to us. And before we do any more of that, Daniel, I thought you could share like what the next steps would be after this meeting. I know that you had mentioned staff was going to withhold a formal recommendation until after public comment, so maybe we could talk about the timeline before we get into this discussion. And then Daniel, you sent that email, and I really appreciate you breaking it down for us, like what we needed to discuss today. And before we get into much discussion after Daniel talks, Teresa, I thought that you would like to share your thoughts that you had written out in your, you said you have a PowerPoint, and then we will discuss this all together.
It's very short. So, but it helped me to think through it. So, you know, I thought maybe it would help other people too. So,
yeah, I appreciate that. Do y'all think that this order makes sense?
That works.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, let's continue. Let's go forward with reviewing what the commission had wanted of us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen while we're in discussion mode. Okay.
All right. Were you wanting me to start that? Sorry.
Sorry. I was just hoping that we could review what the commission had charged us with, because we had another special meeting where we made a decision, and then they kicked it back to us.
Right.
About
so, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. So essentially, they wanted a recommendation from the Athens in Motion Commission for which route to go. There was a few questions they had in regards to multi-use path versus two-way separated facility, whether or not we should stick with multi-use path because that's what was kind of chosen as Athens' mode of, transportation choice. I got a little bit of feedback going on. So I'm not sure. Is that coming from me or?
I think it is coming from you. I think the rest of us are muted.
That's odd because I'm not connected to audio there. Well, I'll just keep going. So we looked at the cost of multi-use path versus two-way separated facility. It was going to be almost the same. And it's slightly more expensive in a couple spots, but it basically came out even. So we decided to stick with the two-way separated path. And then there was a few other things that they had asked us about. And so I drafted that up into the email where this kind of covers all of those recommendations that they were looking for. And it breaks it out in a way that makes it a little easier to approve these individual items, in my opinion, but we can kind of review those together.
Yeah. So after this, after we make our decisions today, this goes back to the mayor and commission, or are you going to hold on to this until public comment comes in? Okay.
Right. So we will go to public comment. I believe our window for that is the very end of April, basically the month of May. Somewhere in May, we will be doing a public input on this area, and we'll send out postcards and we're working on a story map and a survey to kind of give more information. And then that will go to the voting session for mayor and commission, or agenda setting, then voting for Ronnie. Is that June, July?
Yes. Yes, it is. So we will have public engagement in late April, early May, and then we would go to mayor and commission in May, June cycle. So voting would be in June.
So the recommendation can be given to them before the voting session, so by June. And so we can have a recommendation now, and if there is a request to kind of update it or change it, we could potentially do that.
Okay. Thank you for the timeline there. The postcards, those will go out to those with those folks who live along the corridor, like a certain radius.
Ronnie, can you speak to y'all's normal method for that?
Yes. So our normal communication is sending postcards to impacted property owners, the occupants or tenants, and also property owners who are on the deed for the property on the tax map. We also have a serve list that we've gotten contact information for people who would like to know through elected officials and other interested parties. Julia Johnson is the one spearheading the efforts for sending those postcards.
Gotcha. Thank you for the clarity on that. And we'll have public comment, we'll have an online component, and there will be the story map and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Great.
So I'm developing the survey right now, and then we're working with the GIS office to put together a story map, which will essentially give everyone the context, and we'll be able to link out to some of those studies, the previous studies and everything that have been done. So should provide a lot more information. And then we were going to also include that kind of cost breakdown in the pie chart. So it makes a little more sense to them. That's kind of initially how I was thinking about it, was how do we show this to the public? And then I was like, oh, well, I'll put it together real quick, and hopefully it can help you guys.
Yeah, it was great. Okay, so we have the timeline. We know what this is going to look like. Now, let's go back to your email where you had basically what we need to decide today. And then we'll have Teresa share her approach before we get into any open discussion. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Okay. So at this point, segment 4 is on the table for consideration, where before, or at least we weren't thinking about it holistically with the Barber Street project, but we are thinking about segment 4 from Boulevard to Prince Avenue as part of this project.
Correct. Yeah, and the thought there was, after looking at it closer, that is a tier 1 facility. It's just part of a different project, and so it was grouped in with that Finley Street, and it probably was because it was a lower tier with pedestrian and higher with bike, and so they were grouping them together as like values, but really it makes more sense to fit it in with this project.
Great. And that makes sense to me too. I think that makes sense to all of us. So here we're deciding whether we will have a 10-foot wide multi-use path or sharrows. We'll come back to that. And then allocate funding, final design, right-of-way acquisition, construction for segments. And we get to decide whether we want to do that for all 4 segments, for segments 2 to 4, or 3 and 4, and the amount to be funded by Bike and Ped T-Splosh programs, 50-50 split between the Bike and Ped segments. Another thing to decide is prioritization, segments 1 and 2 or segment 1 to move into the final design over other unfunded projects within the Athens in Motion plan. And then finally, if construction is limited, we would decide what would be our preferred order from highest to lowest priority.
And then just to add a little context here as well, the sharrows, as I mentioned in the email, that's not just sharrows, it's the sharrows and other amenities that were included as part of the $270,000 versus the multi-use path, which would be an additional $1,081,000, as you can see in that kind of pie chart. And then I also wanted to mention, let me get this pulled up real quick, that the commit to prioritizing segments there. So what essentially that's saying is, with bullet point number 6, allocate funding for final design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction for segments. Whatever y'all choose to do, if you choose to move fully funded into all of them, then you wouldn't need that next bullet point. If you wanted to fully fund 3 and 4, but then only do the preliminary design for 1 and 2, then in that next bullet point, you'd say prioritizing segments 1 and 2. So essentially, that 7th bullet point is just for whichever ones don't get moved to fully funding the construction. And then from there, that last point is just the order that we would build it, just in case we run out of funds if the prices go up.
Gotcha.
Hey, Lauren, I just wanted to say I'm here. I don't know if you can see me on your screen, but I just walked in.
I see.
Eyes fully dilated. I can barely see the screen, but I can hear.
We'll describe the map for you.
He's here and he's not a cat.
All right, glad to have you, Mark, because I think that if you didn't show up, we weren't going to be able to take a vote today. So thank you.
Greg is here too, so we definitely.
Great.
So we can approve the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, I move we approve the agenda.
Well, let me pull it back up first real quick. Craig, I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry I can't see everyone on the camera. But just to recap, what we're doing is we reviewed the requests from the commission, like some of the questions that they had, and Daniel has brought back the Barber Street plan to us. We talked about the next steps after the meeting. There will be some public comment, and then staff is going to withhold their formal recommendation until public comment comes in, and this will come up for the May-June cycle. The mayor and commission meeting is when they'll discuss about it next. And so we were just at the part where Daniel was summarizing what we needed to do. And we were about to have Teresa talk about her strategy, and then we're going to have a general discussion. And that's all that we were going to do today. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I wanted to just briefly say, I don't know if this is the meeting to do it at or at our next real meeting, but I did want to get some sort of a vote at some point on the Prince Avenue corridor letter from Athens in Motion Commission. I'm not sure, Lauren, how you want to handle that, but it probably should get there sometime in the next couple of weeks, I would think.
Yeah. Well, we can do that in the next meeting. I'm meeting with Elliot next week. I know he's talked to you too.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Mark.
I'll second in that case.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, our agenda passes. Teresa, would you like me to turn over the screen to you so you can share your strategy?
Yeah, that'd be good. Hopefully I can make it work. But just tell me when I can go.
Do it.
Okay. All right, can you see it?
Not yet.
Okay, well, that's not good. Okay, let me try this again. Okay, so share. Oh, I see. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so
Yay.
all right, so here's my little I don't know, I spent a lot of time worrying over this because it was complicated and it has many dimensions. So anyway, so just real quick, here's the map. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are our segments. And let's see, where's my okay, so this is the little cost estimate for the original design that we had sent to Mayor and Commission. And so the total price tag is it's like 7 million and change. And it would be split 50-50 between pedestrian and bicycle, and it would leave about $4 million for the rest of this current T-Splost we're working with. Okay, so I had a chat with Melissa Link this past weekend, and she is very concerned that we're going to run out of money, and she wants us to have plenty of money. And so she was saying she really felt like segment 4 was much more important than segment 1 to prioritize. She also mentioned the TAD funding as a possible way to pay for some of this stuff here.
Teresa, may I ask you for clarification on Commissioner Link's thoughts about segment 4? When she's talking about prioritizing segment 4, does she mean Sharrows and or does she mean the multi-use path option?
Well, I don't think that she has made that distinction yet. I think it's more that the way we were looking at it, it was going to be the afterthought. And she felt like rather than starting with 1, it would make more sense to be starting with 4, work on 4 and 3, fix these intersections here. And then, you know, she didn't say it, but then I had the thought that, you know, with Prince Avenue corridor funding, you know, we could integrate with whatever is done there. You know, and then that way we could maybe get a little bit of financial help from that, but I don't know how all that works. So
Is this all within her district?
I don't know the answer to that question.
It's not actually. I don't think it necessarily. I know we're in Ovita's district and we're on Pulaski Street. She's Boulevard, I'm pretty sure. So it may be the boundary of her district.
Yeah, I thought Boulevard went to Pulaski Street and Pulaski Street is split into.
No, Boulevard goes to Barber. It does not go
No,
through.
no, what I mean is that her district.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll pull it up. I'll figure it out.
I believe her district is the boundary. I believe Barber is the boundary
That's my
between those
thinking.
two
Yeah.
districts.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
I'm just thinking from an equity and a transparency standpoint, just to, you know, I personally, I kind of agree with Link on that, but I also, you know, I understand that she could be watching out for her district.
Yeah,
more so than others.
and she was, and I think Melissa was also very interested in a sort of another path that I don't know the status of it, but that would run kind of eventually along the rail track and then under the loop and out toward Jefferson River Road or something like that. And don't quote me on this, please, but I know that was also a priority for her, and nothing wrong with that, but it's so I'm not sure what else.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of the Prince Avenue corridor funding, I wouldn't. It's a lot of road, and I don't know that the money's going to stretch to add things that aren't currently being discussed, but it certainly would include improvements to that intersection for pedestrians, and probably there's currently kind of a dip in the intersection as you drive north-south, and I think fixing that was part of it, and repaving is also, I believe, part of the entire corridor plan. But I don't know that extending into Barber Street would be part of it. Perhaps closing some of the driveways, or recommending that some of the driveways be closed or narrowed on Barber, might be the extent of it.
Let's, Teresa, you had more to your presentation. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yes.
get sidetracked.
So that's fine. I just, you know,
Discuss.
I just came up with this little scheme because of, you know, how we're going to pay for all this stuff. So I thought that this was one way to kind of look at that. So that's that. Okay, so basically our Barber Street was to complete design for all the segments and intersections, to prioritize my approach here is to complete the design for all segments and intersections, prioritize construction of segments 4 and 3, emphasis on safe, low-stress intersections for pedestrians and bicyclists with clear sight lines and directions for vehicles. So that's basically just sort of an overview, the elevator pitch. Then the development would be when we're designing segment 1, this is strategy A here. Let me just, okay. So we got proposed development strategy A, and I'm just sort of gleaning this from all the materials I've read. For segment 1 would be to narrow from 4 vehicle lanes to 3. For segments 1, 2, and 3 to have the 5-foot continuous sidewalk and the 2-way separated bike facility. For segment 4, continue the existing 5-foot sidewalk and then do new painted sharrows connecting to Prince Avenue, or to do a multi-use path from Boulevard to Prince Avenue. And there are, you know, obviously cost impacts if you go with the multi-use path. Okay, then proposed development strategy B is for segments 1, 2, and 3 to be multi-use path from Dairy Pack to Boulevard. Segment 4, again, same choice, either the existing sidewalk with the sharrows or to continue that multi-use path all the way to Prince. Okay, so and I just wanted to look at these intersections real quick because, you know, they're really important to how the design of this thing comes together. And like, this is that 2-way bike path, you know, and then I don't know exactly where the sidewalk is, but I guess it's along here, parallel. And then Boulevard, this would be raised, and then there are these bump outs, and then here the 2-way bike path then kind of converts into the sharrow, if that's the way we go with that. All right, now the big ticket part of this whole project is this piece of segment 3, I believe it is, where the railroad tracks are. And there's really no way around it. It's going to cost a huge amount of money. And, you know, this is probably not even, it's probably going to be more than that. But so that's going to be the big piece of the budget right there. So the cost that we were working off of, you know, for doing the 4 segments and the 3 intersections took us up to close to $7 million. What I'm suggesting is that if we design segments 1 and 2, if we do work on the construction for 3 and 4, with the intersection at Dairy Pack being deferred, and then, you know, finishing up these intersections here and, you know, getting whatever we can get out of Prince, you know, we're looking at a lower total cost, you know, probably as much as 6 million, but, you know, in that neighborhood. I mean, if we do the sharrows, it'll be less expensive. Looks like we save about $1 million. So that would leave us somewhere between 4 and 6 million for tier 1 projects. And that's the end of the show.
Thank you, Teresa. I have a couple of things I want to put out there. Daniel, I've listened to part of the Mayor and Commission meeting, and Teresa, I know you listen. you listened as well. Did Commissioner Thornton have anything to say about this project? Now that I realize this
I
is,
don't know how to get myself back into the, let's see. How do I come back to the meeting? All I'm looking at is my,
Oh, it's just a circle at the bottom, I believe, for
little
web.
dot,
um,
my video.
I just have to scroll to the top.
But we can still see you.
Okay.
Are you connected through the app or web browser?
Oh, I'm going to stop sharing. That'll help. There we go. Okay. All right, good. I feel better now. So I'm trying to remember if Commissioner Thornton weighed in on that. And if she did, and I'm going to say I don't think she did. If she did, it was not, she did not have a lot to say on it. But I would,
Yeah.
you know, I wouldn't want you all to hold me to that.
I don't recall her speaking on it, but that doesn't mean she didn't.
Right. So one of the reasons why we're considering the bike facilities that are together versus a multi-use path is for safety reasons. Is that because of the terrain of Barber Street, how there's that big hill and it would be difficult for pedestrians to occupy the same space as cyclists for that reason?
So yes, and that was talked a little bit in the memo that they sent over, Tool sent over. Essentially, with the higher speeds that along that route, which would be most likely more heavily commuter rather than recreation, you would end up with more conflict points where cyclists are now having to watch out for pedestrians as well as cars at intersections. And then pedestrians, rather than just walking on a sidewalk and knowing they're going to be fine, they have to kind of watch out for people coming behind them and stuff. And if people are walking next to each other along a multi-use path, now that person's coming up. And those are all just kind of those typical issues that are usually okay along a multi-use path if it's through like a recreational corridor or even like along a lower volume roadway, like some of the other roadways we've done. But along this roadway, we feel like it's going to be more heavily commuter, and it doesn't. And the main reason why they were even looking at the possibility of multi-use is they were hoping that that would create some cost savings, and we determined that it wouldn't, and so it wasn't worth considering.
And that is my concern with the segment 4 as well. It's for the multi-use path option. While I would like a separated bike facility in that stretch, I'm not sure how it would work in that very urban, very heavily pedestrianized area. And, you know, I'm really kind of torn, and I'm almost wondering if, you know, while we may want to, there may be potential cost savings if you were able to eliminate, I keep coming back to this, eliminate the on-street parking, you could build a protected bike facility, potentially, possibly maintaining the existing sidewalks for pedestrians and not have that conflict of the pedestrians and the cyclists. But I'm a bit torn. I'm not sure that right now the high-speed traffic is primarily between Pulaski and Boulevard. That's where the cars really accelerate, and that's the part that needs the most calming and slowing down. And I guess I don't know whether the sharrows and bump outs and things like that would do enough or to slow traffic down or not. I guess I don't know what your experience has been, you know, at how effective those things are. Will it lower the speed by a few miles an hour? Are you still going to get people going crazy fast in there, or, you know, what?
Yeah, and I think the bump outs and everything are what we kind of consider that would potentially lower speeds. Also, with that raised intersection at Boulevard, the likelihood of someone blowing through that stop sign and continuing to pick up
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
See him go airborne. Yeah,
and
that's a good point. Yeah.
I can, if I can share screen, I'm gonna hop on. Let's see. Just need to find my.
So if those bump outs and sharrows and raised intersection do succeed in slowing traffic, then which option does that favor? I'm very brain dead, so that may be an obvious question.
So if
The cheaper one.
the Sharrows are good enough safety and cyclists feel comfortable with that, then it would favor the option of doing segment 4 for 269,000 instead of adding in the multi-use path along there, which would add an additional $1 million. So this,
And sorry, what would the speed limit be down there with the bump outs and the raised intersection and all?
I don't know.
I think it's 35 along there right now.
Yeah, it would
Oh, that's
probably
ridiculous.
stay the same.
Yeah, I think it's 35 and it should be slower than that,
Absurd.
particularly given how close the cars are. When I'm walking, there's literally 6 inches between me and where cars are driving, often right close to the curb. I mean,
Yeah.
you really have to be careful. If you trip at the wrong time, it could be fatal. I mean, it really is quite unsafe right now. And it's very, very heavily used. I never walk my dog down there without encountering somebody along that stretch. I do think the one issue with the multi-use path also is how it interacts with Prince Avenue. Once you get them up down to Prince, then what do you do? You know, do you become a pedestrian crossover? It's a more natural transition actually with the Sharrows and the on-street, you know, putting the bikes on street.
Yeah, I'm up there in section 4. I'm kind of leaning towards the on-street biking too, but I'm also trying to keep in mind less aggressive cyclists too, and younger children and all. But I'm torn too, Mark, on up there, because I don't think it's good to ride, you know, the way as fast as I want to ride up there in a multi-use path, especially as I know there's going to be a lot of pedestrians up there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I probably wouldn't. And I do think, you know, thinking about what kind of users would we have there, or do we want to encourage? What kind of new users do we want to encourage? And certainly, you know, you see a lot of parents with kids on bicycles in that area. It's not at all uncommon. So, and I almost wonder if some sort of a hybrid where maybe there's I don't know. I'm really, really conflicted, as you can probably tell by the way I'm mumbling a lot. But it's you know, I can see pros and cons on both sides, and certainly the cost favors the Sharrows.
I was thinking maybe just listening to this conversation, maybe what we need is 2. Maybe we need a multi path and the Sharrows for segment 4.
Yeah, see, for segment 4, I'm concerned about continuity. So I'm like, well, if we have the two-way separated bike lanes on the rest of the segment, then I kind of would prefer those to continue. But then we lose sidewalk on that side for people.
I think losing sidewalk would be very unpopular.
Yeah, I think that I agree with Teresa. I mean, the ideal would be a sidewalk on both sides, a protected bike lane on both sides, and eliminating on-street parking if that's possible, if that gives us the width we would need. I don't know the width there, if that's sufficient. Because there is off-street parking for all the buildings along there, at least up until Pulaski Street.
Teresa, you had mentioned both multi-use path and Sharrows. So do you mean building out the multi-use path for the 1.3 technically $million, and then also doing the Sharrows and bump outs, which would be an additional 270,000?
Well,
I'm not sure if there's room for that.
I think that what I'm saying is that because we've got 2 different types of bicycle users and we have pedestrians too. So the slower, easier riders could be on the multi-use path with pedestrians. And then people like Mark and Aaron and Jake could be in the Sharrows for that segment 4.
Good. I mean,
I don't know about the bump outs and all that stuff because I haven't drilled down into the details, but I was just throwing that out as maybe something, you know, another thing to consider for that piece of it.
Daniel and Ronnie, what's the width of Barber at that point? Do you know that offhand? I wouldn't expect you to know it offhand.
I do not. Ronnie? I know that we couldn't even get an extra 2 feet for a 12-foot multi-use path. So it's pretty limited. I think one thing to keep in mind is with the Sharrow and bump out option, there's still room to implement a multi-use path in the future. Building the Sharrows and bump outs doesn't exclude the possibility of having an improved facility in the future, if it continues to be kind of a safety issue. Now, I understand you'd rather. There's also the flip side of that is there's cost savings to do all of it at once with the mobilization and stuff. But as I think, as it keeps getting brought up, we're getting kind of low in the coffers with this project if it was fully built out. And even if it wasn't fully built out, there's no guarantee that, with some costs may be increased, it could still blow through a lot of the budget. And if we prioritize a segment, so this is another thing to consider, is that segment 4 was tier 1 bike but not tier 1 pedestrian, and if we prioritize this over the other segments and then the other segments end up getting cut out, or we have to tap into a heavier amount of the pedestrian funding because that one will have more money left over than the bike funding, then essentially we're pulling from the pedestrian project to fund more bike. So it wouldn't really be an even split where, because it's not tier 1 pedestrian.
Is that a problem?
That would be for the SPLOST user group to decide.
You mean the T-SPLOST Citizens Oversight Committee?
Yes. Yeah, the oversight committee. Thank you.
Okay.
Because essentially, if did I explain that okay, or was it a little confusing?
No, that made sense, which is, I'm just, as far as I'm concerned, money's money, and, designing the project the right way is the most important thing. And, I wouldn't have any problem taking a little pedestrian money to fund this piece of bike facility. But I don't know what the rules are, which is why I asked if it was a problem. If it's gonna run afoul of somebody, then obviously we'd have to scrap that idea.
Yeah, I feel like the bike bucket has gotten the short end of the stick. And Aaron, you have some thoughts on this because you're on the Citizens Oversight Committee with me, because we had less money to begin with the bike bucket, like just under 6 million, and the PED projects had, under 12 million, 11 million. And anytime we've had a multi-use path option come up, that has been 50-50 bike, 50, some from the bike, some from the PED. So, I'm okay with it going the other way. I don't feel like it's wrong.
Me too. And hopefully members of the oversight committee would feel the same way. So, and we could discuss this too if it
We can
comes
provide
to it.
context.
Yeah.
I think Ronnie had something to say.
Yeah, thank you. This is very healthy conversation, and I think thank you, Teresa, for putting this together. It's definitely good to see that you guys are very, very engaged and informative, and paying attention to details. It helps. One thing I want to just make sure we all understand: segment 4 has a unique character where right-of-way is limited. The current sidewalk sits 20 feet to the building limits. Now, I don't know, and I couldn't see on aerial view if there's porches that extend beyond the building limits, but they are very close to the existing sidewalk. So if you think about the two-way bike facility with a sidewalk, if you extend the continuity, which I don't disagree with the statement, what I see it is being challenged when it comes to right-of-way. And building something that's going to put people's walkway, which is the sidewalk, right in front of their doorstep, with a 15-foot minimum impact. Now, the topography is also such that it would require retaining walls. So the cost, yes, we do have a cost today, but I think it's on the lower end because of those retaining walls. We don't know. We haven't done survey that far out on segment 4. So I just want to, bring that to your attention and make you aware that, that there is limited right of way. And also the parking, it was discussed heavily during public engagement back in 2018 when Barber Street and Chase Street Athens in Motion plan discussed more in the general terms, and this segment was identified to be shared facility for that main reason, that right-of-way impact beyond what the sidewalk is today, and the parking, that there was no appetite for losing any parking. So that may have changed. Again, this is, I'm not saying this to change your perspective, just to give you more of what was done, what we have heard in the past, and the challenges we have with this segment 4. And now the multi-use path, the proposing multi-use path right against the curb. So it will minimize impacts to property. So we just need to go about 5 to 7 feet from existing sidewalk. And hopefully we don't need retaining walls being that close to the existing curb. So anyway, just want to bring that to your attention. And yes, the placemaking for the parking and the bump outs and driveway extensions meant to maintain the speed limit, posted speed limit in this segment, which is 30, and segment 3, 2, and 1 speed limit is 35. These are the posted speed limits in this area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I think if you, I still would favor from, I think going from Barrow Street to, I think I was saying Pulaski earlier, from Barrow to Prince, that section, I think Sharrows make sense. There currently is not supposed to be any parking there. People do often ignore that, making it hard to turn. So this section could be bumped out, sharrowed, whatever, but I would favor more of a protected bike lane on the part north of Barrow Street to Boulevard because of the high speed of the traffic that I see there. And that would mean removing the on-street parking, but so does doing all these bump outs. That's removing some parking as well. I mean, you could take 2 11-foot travel lanes and then have 5 or 6 feet on each side for a protected bike lane and accomplish that. And I think at a much lower cost than many of these options, and probably no more than the Sharrow option because you wouldn't be doing all those, excuse me, bump outs. I just think that would be the safest option for pedestrians and cyclists, which is, what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, so some parking will be removed or in Tool's plan, but it's not that much parking. It's, I think, minimal to get in the bump outs.
Yeah, once you do all those bump outs, though, you eliminate protected bike lanes, period. No one's going to tear those out and put in protected bike lanes. You're basically saying we're never putting protected bike lanes on Barber if you put in all those bump outs. That's what my concern going forward. I think. I mean,
Ronnie, would you agree with that?
I don't believe so. I unfortunately disagree with that because the bump outs, they're going into the asphalt where the asphalt is. The parking is just being formalized where it is, and instead of getting to an intersection where it's open, you just see a bump out. Instead of car parking in the radius area and within the intersection, now they won't be able to park. Where if we want to say and this is a good example of how limited right-of-way is. If we think about a future two-way separate bike facility, it would be in place of this sidewalk, and it would extend 5 more feet towards this house on the left. And then the sidewalk next to it, that's another 5 feet towards that house. How much of that house now is, we're literally against the house. I think, I can't measure this distance, but if the sidewalk is 5 feet, that walkway to the house is about 12 feet. And that's pretty much you're right against that house.
Yeah, I agree.
This is probably one of the closest houses to the sidewalk. The other ones are close. They're probably more like 20 feet, 22 feet, and so on. But this one is probably the closest. And then one more item on Barrow Street. While I may not disagree that there might be different traffic pattern between the two, adding another intersection as a transition point adds another expense to the project. I don't disagree that it should be here. I believe the designers looked at this and have not been asked to consider Barrow to be the transition point between two. Again, if you do a transition between multi-use path and a separate bike facility, we will have to do some engineering. And would it be a rate intersection? I don't know. We'll have to.
No,
look at it.
what I was suggesting, right? What I was suggesting was separated bike lanes on either side of the road, one way on either side of the road, so that would transition naturally into Sharrow. I guess, or maybe that's naive, but probably is.
It needs a little bit of work. I'm not gonna say, oh, this is a huge expense given the project price point at this point. It's not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker here. It just needs additional details.
Is putting a stop sign in at the corner of Barrow and Barber an option? Because that would also slow traffic to some extent, make it safer for pedestrians who are crossing there. And as I've mentioned before, when you're driving up Barrow, it's a challenging turn in terms of sight lines.
Definitely, a stop sign will reduce, at least the speed, especially between Barrow and Boulevard. It will require a traffic study to be determined. I can't tell without a traffic study and crash data and all that. See if it meets the threshold for the MUTCD.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Because there is a stop sign.
Hold on. Okay. So we need to move forward. I'm going to say that something Daniel mentioned is we can come back and revise our recommendation, but we need to we have 5 minutes to come forth with something to get on the same page. And segment 4 is just one part of this whole project. A question for clarification I have for Daniel and staff is, we have money in our budget to fund all 4 segments today, correct?
Ronnie.
Yes.
I'm going to talk to you.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So I'm less interested in pursuing this project in phases, because I see it as part of a phase in and of itself to, as I mentioned in the email, to ultimately connect out to Cathwood and hopefully Vincent Drive one day. So I see it as a phased approach in and of itself. And we know that this project is not going to serve cyclists particularly well if we just do a couple phases of it. I see that the money that we have from T-Splost 2018 is, I see that have the sort of fiscal mentality of we should go ahead and spend it because we know we're going to ask for more money. And we've already spent time with these design concepts. So the money, there's no reason to have it stick around. We should go ahead and spend it, and we're going to ask for more money for more projects because we have another 32 tier 1 bike projects, another 32 tier 1 ped projects. I think we should just go for it. So coming back to Daniel's email, which I'm going to pull up again, here's what I think, and y'all are free to override me on this. I think that we should do Sharrows for segment 4. I think that we should allocate funding for final design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction for all 4 segments for however much they cost, and split it at 50-50 for bike ped. I feel a little differently about the priority order. I think that I actually think strategically it would make more sense to do them in reverse order, to actually do 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4, because I think that we can get buy-in on segment 4 later. But if we're just talking about Sharrows right now anyway, it's not really a huge cost. So there's no reason that, that is going to break us. Those are my thoughts.
Would you consider 3214 as an option?
3214.
And let me, with that recommendation, let me just show what the price breakdown would be. Now, assuming that with segment 1, you wanted to use the 3-lane option since it would save some funding. Is that right?
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking about that. I support the 3-lane option.
So the total would in that case be 6.1 million, and this would be the cost breakdown in percentages with this big. I know it's kind of hard to read. Segment 3 is the purple. So 1 is yellow, 2 is green, 3 is purple, 4 is orange. I'd also like to mention that any combination of them that were done, we want to make sure that the intersections were done on either end of that. So for instance, if only segments, 3 and 4 were completed, we would want to make sure that we got Oneida Boulevard, both of those in there, and not just leaving Oneida undone. And I think it would be helpful to go through each item one at a time, probably, so that we could kind of figure out if there's any disagreements on those.
Yeah, do we have time for that? I know that we were trying to end at 5:30.
Well, let's see what we can do. So the first one is design a 2-way separated bike facility and a 5-foot sidewalk over a multi-use path on segments 1 through 3. Does everyone agree that we want to keep it as 2-way separated?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If the cyclists like that best, it's okay with me.
Okay. For the next one, reduce the 4-lane roadway to a 3-lane with 2 travel lanes and 1 center turn lane. So the project utilizes remaining roadway pavement and right-of-way for installation of the 2-way separated bike facility.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to come back to the third one because that one's segment 4. Well, I guess I'll just ask, between multi-use path and Sharrows, who all is in favor of Sharrows?
Sharrows.
Could I just say something very quickly about that segment 4, just from my lens, where I have lots of friends with kids over there. I have a 12-year-old. I'm thinking about where they are, and I'm trying to figure out how Pulaski fits in with this. Mark mentioned Barrow. Like if I don't live there, but if my 12-year-old was leaving our house and we live near Boulevard and wanted to go downtown, I just see that as so attractive for teenagers, for kids that age. What's going to be the best route? Is a parent going to send their kid out that age with a Sharrow? And it may not be at this stage of the development, but that's kind of the lens that I'm thinking of. Would they send them down Barrow to get down to Pulaski and then get downtown? What's going to be their safest and best route as we encourage that population in their development for bike use is my question.
And there's also the I'm not sure what the age cutoff is, but children can use sidewalks.
I was just going to say that children are allowed to use sidewalks legally in Georgia.
It's 16.
Although that sidewalk's quite narrow and half covered with leaves and not
That's what I was
really
gonna say. That sidewalk is
bikeable.
less than yeah.
Yeah, that's a mess. Yeah.
Poles and stuff.
To try to go quickly. So who all wants multi-use path? Just raise your hand. Okay, we'll come back to this part of the question.
It would depend on the answer to my question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
What's going to be the safest route? I mean, I guess sidewalk is what I'm hearing. But
separated bike lane. Separated bike lane. That's just not an option to vote on. Unfortunately, we weren't presented that.
I think even with a separated bike lane, for your child to go down, I would say sidewalk. And I don't know if they're running. Would sidewalk improvements be a part of this as well? Improving the sidewalk when they do the bump outs?
No, no, it's not about to improve the sidewalk. However, we maintain our sidewalks, so if they need maintenance, we'll maintain them.
Yeah. Let's jump to the next option, which is the maintain the sidewalk between Anita Street and Loop 10 underpass on the eastern side of the roadway where possible. Does everyone agree that we should do that? Okay. And then moving the entire project from North Chase Street to Prince Avenue, all segments 1 through 4 into preliminary design phase. Is everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So basically the only things are what we do with Boulevard or Boulevard to Prince, which is segment 4, and then how does that funding get allocated? Now, I will say that one of the questions that we will be asking in the public input is we will be asking people if they would prefer to have a Sharrow with bump out facilities or a multi-use path there. So that is a direct question we're going to be asking them. It's standalone. If you are interested to see what that answer would be. And then we're also going to be asking the 3 and 4 lane thing. And then rather than prioritizing the segments and dragging and dropping, we're going to be asking high, medium, and low priority or not preferred for all of the segments and their alternatives. That way we have a pretty clear idea of where the high priority and low priorities are along that corridor. As far as the construction phasing goes, I've heard 3, 2, 1, 4. Do we want to discuss that? I know we're at 5:30.
Just real briefly, so I don't know what the numbers would be, but I do think that Melissa Link's TAD comment is worth considering because general time will be there, and that's going to be a major residential and retail center, which will also involve a lot of commuters into downtown. So I think that, you know, something to consider is if money could be raised by that TAD, then maybe section 1 could wait. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Like general time, like they're there. I mean, Wayfair is there. Like this is happening. And I think that that TAD could be used for the next phase of this project, which is going out to Cathwood Drive, is going out to Vincent, maybe getting that connection from the Greenway over the river to the Youth Hall and Sports Complex. So I think that that money would not be wasted and that that's not really a missed opportunity. You know what I'm saying? I think that we're creating the, you know, the momentum to build the future phase. So that's why I really want to get segment 1 funded, especially.
And I throw in a plug for segment 4. I feel like there's something philosophical about connecting with Prince Avenue, where there's already a lot of activity, you know, up to that boulevard playground, you know, and Boulevard is a beautiful place to ride a bike. I just feel strongly that segment 4 should be high on the priority list.
Yeah, I agree, Teresa. I think 3 and 4 should be higher than 1 and 2. I don't want to be in a situation where we spend a lot of money building a multi-use path that doesn't connect anything and that is not used, and it sits there and people look at it and go, why are you wasting our money on that? Because we see it fitting into a future plan, but not everyone understands that. Whereas 3 and 4 are heavily used corridors. It would have an immediate effect on safety, on mobility, on connectivity, and people could see that. And really, once they see that built and are using it every day, then they say, yeah, let's extend that, or let's keep extending that. And that's part of the plan. But I do think giving people an immediate benefit and an immediate improvement in safety would be my priority.
It's good for our brand, if you will, but also in terms of making that piece of Barber Street safer. You know, if we can coordinate with the Prince Avenue corridor and really fix up that intersection, you know, that can create a sort of a gateway so that people come in slower than they currently do. And between that intersection and Boulevard, you know, with the traffic calming measures that we could put in, I think that would make a huge difference. And, you know, the people that live along there, I think would enjoy a more peaceful street. And, you know, if we can avoid taking away somebody's front yard, I'm all in favor of that. So,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Another thing to note is that segment 1 would connect directly to General Times development, and they plan to plug in at that point. From the last plans I saw, now obviously they're private; they can change and do however they want. But they do have a desire to connect along that area, and if one were removed, we're now creating a gap between, getting people connected to a new destination that is underway. And so it's happening. And as you said, and we're still 3 to 4 years out with our project. So by the time this is actually being constructed, they might already be there waiting for this path. So,
but we're not talking about not building it though. We're talking about the order, the prioritization. What do we improve first? And then, and particularly since there may be an alternative funding for segment 1, that if we do get to the end of it, what I'd hate to see is we build out sections 1, 2, and 3, or 1 and 2, and then there's no desire or stomach or funding for doing 3 and 4, which are the most heavily used and would most improve safety.
Right. At this point, though, since we're talking about just doing the sharrows for section 4, it's less than $500,000. We're not talking about drastic improvements. We're talking about, the bump outs and the sharrows. It's going to happen. And plus where it is, it's got a high profile. I don't think there's a need to prioritize 4 because I think it's already going to be a priority. I just want to make sure these other things don't get left out. I think that it's much more easier to draw attention to 4 down the road. And I think it's fine.
Well, if we say 1, 2, 3, 4, then it's the lowest priority. We're saying it's the lowest priority, aren't we? I can't agree with that. I'm sorry.
How long would it take to build section 4 if we're talking about its bump outs and sharrows versus section 3? Ronnie?
Yeah, this would be definitely an easy segment to build. Given that most of the work proposed to be in the right of way, definitely easy. So construction-wise, it's easy. Maybe 2 to 4 months. That's just segment 4 without the raised intersection at Boulevard.
So for me, that actually moves it up in the priority order because we can build it quickly and people will see that we're transforming that corridor.
So I don't have a problem if like Lauren says, we want to just go ahead and say, yeah, let's go soup to nuts. That's fine. And yeah, we'll get more money someday, somehow, some way, and maybe the TAD can come in and help pay for things. But I really feel like we ought to do it in the order of 4, 3, 2, 1. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so then the compromise can be Athens in Motion as a commission wants to see this entire segment conceptualized, funded, constructed, right-of-way purchased in the way that we've talked about. And if there was a priority order, we would say 4, 3, 2, 1.
I think, yeah, I'm there, sure.
Yes.
I think that's very well put.
Okay.
Okay, so to clarify there, I've got 4, 3, 2, 1 is the priority order, and then moving the entire or allocate funding for final design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction for all segments. And the amount of, I'll find out the total, and then that'd be funded by Bike and Head T-Splosh programs for a 50-50 split. And I did want to also add in that if other forms of funding do come in, this money can still be used as a match. The one thing is, by allocating the funds, we can't necessarily allocate them elsewhere, but we can still use, so like if there was another project that came up that was like a once in a lifetime thing and we didn't have money for it, then, we wouldn't be able to commit the funds there because they were already here. But we can use TAD funds and other sources to do the building. I think the only ones that are left is that discussion about Boulevard to Prince Avenue on segment 4, Maltese Path and Sharrow. Would y'all rather hold off on that recommendation or?
Sharrow's, I thought was what we decided.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Sharrow.
Okay.
I mean,
For now.
So do y'all want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we want to allocate all the money for design, right-of-way acquisition, construction for all 4 segments. We would, if there's a priority order, it would be 4, 3, 2, 1. We are recommending Sharrow's for segment 2, and 4, segment 4. Sharrow's and bump outs as proposed. Is there anything else you need? And the 3 lanes for segment 1.
And then moving the entire project into preliminary design phase.
Yes, and moving the whole project into preliminary design phase. That's my motion. Can I get a second?
And then the 2-way separated facility on 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, in the 2-way separated facility.
Okay, I'll second. I like it.
Thank you, Teresa. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, same sign. All right. Nice. 4 meetings to talk about Barber Street.
Before we adjourn, we brought up equity and trying to think about how to talk about that in terms of, we don't have a disaggregated priority rating system for our Athens in Motion plan from Tool yet, right? Do we? Because it's really hard to just sort of make guesses about if you're trying to think about saving money for projects for reasons for equity considerations. I'm just guessing at which tier 1 projects have especially high equity priority scores.
I think I have the scores, but
Even that
they
would be
have
helpful.
developed a tool that allows us to rescore the segments. I haven't reviewed that yet. I remember it coming across my desk early on. And so I think it's
If we
something.
could just have access to the scores by priority, whatever element, that would be really helpful. Sorry, I didn't mean to prolong the meeting, but I was thinking about that the whole time.
Okay. So I will see what I can find for that. And so do y'all want that for your next meeting? Just kind of a map of the equity scores?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be great because I was wondering the same thing, and that was my question earlier, alluded to that too, about the commission districts and all.
Gotcha. Are there any other things?
Okay. Well, thank y'all for this discussion. Daniel, I'd like to thank you for helping us focus on what we needed to do, and the pie structure, again, very helpful. Teresa, you did such a great job breaking down the presentation. I mean, I almost want to like assign an Athens in Motion commissioner to like every project that we have to kind of work with staff and Daniel to break it down for us and translate it.
I had to dumb it down so I could understand it myself.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah, no, it certainly wasn't dumbing down. It was just, making it, concise. And of course, that's not saying anything against Tool or staff. We definitely appreciated the detail and the thought that they put into what to each of the segments and the options, and we felt like it was very transparent. So we appreciate their patience with us.
It was just a lot of detail, and there are so many levels to think about them, and it was very overwhelming to me. I mean, for the first couple of times I looked at it. So anyway, if we have another situation, I'll do that again.
Yeah, and so for the future, what we might do, y'all, is we might, anytime we have, I don't know if we're going to have anything for a while, but there's a big presentation or something we need to decide, like a street or a project, maybe that will just go ahead and be a special called meeting during the month.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll just dedicate 2 hours to that one thing, and then we'll have our regular meeting. And it's long, but it's not as long as the mayor and commission meetings. So, okay.
And I'll be sending out the final recommendation as I have it written. So if I have anything mistyped, please let me know.
I move to adjourn.
I'm ready to adjourn too. Yeah, and Ronnie, thanks for being here. I think that he has, okay, yeah. And thank you, Daniel. You guys, I will see you soon. Policy meeting is next week, I think. Calendar, yeah. All right, goodbye.
Bye, all.